That's funny. All right. We are live into Facebook. This is episode 21 of Bosses in Action. And it's good because we're going to talk to Lee Atkins about this conversion process through automation and some action plans. So I love that you're covering this because you know more about this than I do. So I'm going to be asking some questions as you go through this. And it sounds easy, right? We were just talking about this a few seconds ago. It sounds easy, but it's a little bit more complicated than it should be because that's just the process. And we need to dive into it. So Lee, can you do a quick intro as to what you do? Because you also offer some amazing services that we probably all need. And then tell us about you.
Cool, perfect. So my name is Lee Atkins, based in Atlanta, Georgia. I run a company named Amplified Solutions that focuses on operational help for real estate. Obviously, having a CRM and it running well is a large part of your operations of your business. So I've worn every hat in real estate. I've been a solo agent, I've been a team member, been a partner in a brokerage. I've literally worn all of the hats. And I think it puts me in a unique position to see what other people are doing. Honestly, more times what other people are doing that's not working. I wish I had the magic answer. Sometimes it's eliminating the things that aren't working. But, you know, I'm a big fan of CRM as a whole, obviously Follow Up Boss specifically, and certainly using it to leverage it. It's almost another human. It's almost another team member if you're using it well. But I think by the same token, in this day and age, a lot of people now realize when they're getting an auto response or when they're getting a drip. And so, you know, people don't like to be dripped on. Believe it or not, people don't like automated drips coming at them randomly.
On that really quick, and then you'll continue only because I'll forget here, and it matters. With the automated drip, if you do have automation that sounds like it's automated, one of the best things to do where you'll get brownie points from the consumer is as soon as they say stop, or take me off this list, they're assuming it's automated because it probably is. But what you can do is jump in there and say, I'm so sorry, I was actually texting you, but I'll remove you from this, right? And they'll be like, oh, this was actually real, right? So, or you could say something along the lines, I'm sorry, it's actually me texting you. So let me know if you do need my help, and then keep them on there. That is an added bonus that we've been doing over the last year. It's worked really well.
Nice. No, that's great. That's a good tip. And so I'll dive right in. And what I want to first do is define, for lack of a better term, automations and action plans, since that's our topic. And they're really simple. I'm really into breaking these down to almost the absurd. And that is, an action plan is a series of things, a series of events, a series of things that can happen automatically. So you're applying an action plan. It can send emails, it can create tasks, it can make a note, it can assign or reassign, start and stop action plans. But an action plan is simply a series of events. An automation is simply a series or a set of conditions that fires an action plan. So to your point, Tristan, it's pretty freaking simple, right? It's like we have a series of things that can happen in a certain order or in a certain time frame. And then we have a thing that can trigger that thing to happen. So I just wanted to start by breaking it down, just being incredibly simple with what these tools really are. And then I want to dig into action plans more first, because automations are a little more in advanced use. I guess it's safe to say it that way. But, you know, to me, an action plan can do a number of things. Number one, well, the way that they're applied. Let's start with that. The first and foremost is what I tend to just call a drip, which is the auto apply plan in the lead flow. This is typically designed for the initial conversion. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Follow Up Boss, lead flow is kind of the brain of the lead routing system.
Yep.
So it determines who the leads go to. It can assign a lender or a lender group, and it can fire an action plan. So that action plan is typically used for, hey, thanks for reaching out. Hey, saw you were on our site. Some sort of auto response level of response. Now, that said, it can also obviously continue on and touch the person with the intent or the hope that they don't always want to talk to you day one, but certainly the hope that day 3, day 5, day 6, once you say something interesting, once you send over the right property, once whatever that thing that happens is, then they want to talk to you, but they haven't gone into space because they didn't just want to talk to you at that moment. And so that's the main, application to me of an action plan being applied automatically. Action plans can also be applied by an agent or by someone on the team once the motivation is determined. So you can manually say, hey, this is a buyer 24-month person, so I'm going to put them on a buyer 24-month plan. That takes a human. It's relatively difficult to actually discern someone's interest and motivation without just speaking to them or asking some better questions.
Do you know, because you've created all these action plans before for agents or set up the processes, what have you seen are the best drips or initial texts, emails that can get somebody getting back to you quicker?
Yeah, so I have two schools of thought on this. First off, just being conversational, right? Nobody, no offense, but nobody does want to talk to a realtor unless they're really literally like, we want to list our house. We've read all our reviews. Can you meet us at 5? Which I barely remember those leads. But unless they really want to talk to you, it really is more about just some general engagement of, hey, is there a good time we could talk? Hey, text is great, but I'd love if we could grab a phone call, or hey, would you like to grab a Zoom? Just some sort of something teeing up a response. Should always end with a question mark, generally speaking. And you should always give some sort of, just make it easy for them to reply. Make it easy for them to say, hey, I'm at work right now, but 5 o'clock would be great. Or, hey, my wife needs to be in this conversation. Can we talk tomorrow? So just eliciting that conversation. But I have a deep belief in action plans that there's really two kind of methods here. One is the high touch action plan, which I think people feel largely can tell are automated, depending. If you're really good at writing them, maybe not. But the really effective action plan, I know this isn't sexy, I know this isn't the silver bullet answer people want, is when you're high touch up front, and then the action plans reminds them that, oh yeah, that's that guy we talked to. He seemed really sharp. He was really good. He sent us over some extra properties. We met with him. To me, the most powerful action plan is going to be the one to follow up a high touch by an agent. Period. Like, I think too many of us are leaning on this magical, this action plan is going to go until somebody says, hey, we were ready to meet you. And it just doesn't work.
Yeah, dude, I agree with you on that. One of the things I've been telling some agents to do is to anticipate the questions that are going to be asked. Like, what does a home inspection look like? What's the process of selling my home? How long is the escrow process? For us in California, it's an escrow process, and things like that, right? And then put them into YouTube, then get those links, and then be able to drip those emails into your initial action plans, or those people that are coming in from online leads. All of these, now you're giving value. And
Right.
The cool thing is, through Follow Up Boss, it allows you to put in the video with a link, and it populates and it shows. So it's even more powerful.
Right. And you're educating, and you have the stats around, are they clicking and opening this? Have they opened this 10 times? Now maybe it's time to give them a call instead of waiting for the magical, like.
Dude, and then you take it to that next level, and instead you put these links or these videos, you host them on your website, you put the Follow Up Boss pixel on the website, and now you can track to see who's coming through, and it's a beautiful thing once you have it all together.
Yeah, and then at some point, if you really want extra credit, shoot them a personalized bomb when you know they're engaged, that just says, hey, just touching base, it's been a while since we connected, or whatever the CRM tells you, whatever the notes are that say you haven't talked to this person in 3 months, or they open every email, or use that intel to shoot a bomb that just says, hey, I hope you're getting lots of good information from us. Let me know if you have any other questions or anything else I can send over, anything like that. That's helpful. That's interesting. That's not, hey, I got 9 realtors calling me right now and I don't want to talk to any of them.
That's true. And look, most people that come through, at the beginning with these action plans for online leads, they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to text. Like if I'm inquiring, I probably just want to text. I don't want you to talk to me. I just want to guard my time and be like, hey, do you need any help? Do you have any questions about any homes? I'll be like, yeah, you know what? I do. Here's my question. Help me later.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. That's it, buddy. So I love it. So
it really is simple. And I know people want the magic words. I like, just tell me what the magic words are. But like you said, California, it's escrow. In some states, it's title. In some states, like, I just don't think there is a perfect magical action plan. I think the magical action plan is being interesting, it's being engaging, and being educational, period. You know?
That's it, dude. That's it. And that's part of it. So take me through this process that you have, because you get to see mega agents and successful agents processes, and then you get to tweak it and be like, hey, you guys are missing this, you guys are missing that, let me help you here, let me add this. What's next in this outline that you've got?
So yeah, so to that point, I mean, there's a couple of things that can happen. So if the action plan is still running, you know, there could be things like, perfect example, one of my favorite things to do is in that action plan, there's a little checkbox in action plans that says, does this action plan continue running or does it stop running if this person is engaged? And engaged being defined as responded to a text or an email through the system, or a call is logged. I believe it's still more than 2.5 minutes. Otherwise, that plan keeps running. So one of my favorite things to do in the plans, I guess I'm starting at the end and working backwards now, is to initiate a stage change. So if that person comes in as a lead, and after 30 days or 45 days or 2 years or however long you want them to be in they're a lead phase, at the end of that plan, I'm a huge fan of adding 2 things. One, a tag that says action plan complete, or buyer nurture action plan, whatever it is, whatever the plan is, and potentially a stage change. I love moving people to nurture or long-term nurture or whatever your stage is. Like, they can't be a lead for 5 years. That's not a good use of the system. So have them, if they have not engaged with you after 30 minutes or 30 days or 45 days or however long, then their stage can change automatically. I like tagging them that plan for 2 reasons. Number one, an automation can fire another plan. So if you tag them buyer nurture action plan complete, then you can create, I don't want to get too complicated, but you could use that tag to trigger another action plan, to trigger an ISA to follow up with them, whatever that thing is. But labeling that becomes something useful that you can use in the future. You know, to me, I like a blend of, I try not to do a lot of tasks to agents, just because tasks really can just pile up and then people don't complete them.
Mine.
So here's one pro tip. Now, let's not everybody go doing this instead of tasks and just making the same problem with this, but you can create a note in an action plan. And a note will actually send an email to the assigned agent with the contents of that note. And then that email also has a link right to that contact. So if there's a higher value person, I wouldn't go swapping out all your tasks for notes, because then you're just going to be in the same boat with a bunch of notes. But a note is a little stronger, like, hey, agent, check out this person, with a direct link from email to click and go to that person. So that note could be send a bomb, make a call, set up a Zoom consultation, but that note can be whatever you want it to be. The other thing I've gotten into doing, since you can't do text, since you can't send automated text directly in Follow Up Boss beyond, is occasionally making tasks that say send text template number 2.
Is that something that you think we should be doing, or something that maybe we shouldn't? Because I find that, like you said at the beginning, setting a task throws me off so badly. I go in and I'm like, oh, I have like 50 tasks to do that day.
I think part of the problem is that the task is like, call this guy. And then you're like, oh, well, I got to call. Then I got to look at the notes. Who is this guy? When the task is send text template buyer nurture number 2, then you're like, oh, okay, send text template buyer. I mean, I still don't want to pile up tasks. But I think that's a little more effective workaround than just having 90 tasks in an action plan that an agent's just going to ignore,
Which they do, by the way.
Right.
They hit a threshold, and I do too, where I see too many tasks and I'm like, F it. I'm just delete all of them. I'll start from scratch.
Start over tomorrow. And then a week later, rinse and repeat.
Terrible.
Well, but I think, to be fair, it's a bit of an evolution, right? Like when we first had action plans, it was like, sweet, we're going to make a task every 2 days, buy or die. Like we're just going to, let's just do all the things. And now I think we all know more and more that, it is nurturing the relationship. Agents don't need a million tasks that they're going to get while they're driving around or while it's not time to do it. But yeah, I think, and I'm still a big fan of sending the auto emails, by the way, but I think having a strategy where maybe there's the templated bombs in them, where it just says like, hey, just checking in on you or whatever, where it's generic, but it's going out automatically. Because again, you're going to get those triggers, you're going to get those stats based on like, hey, this guy, and to your point earlier, all these action plans and email templates have stats. So if anybody tells you they have the magic action plans, ask to see their back end stats. Because,
show me the numbers.
Because that's all it really is. And again, market differences. Are you a team? Are you a brokerage? Are you a solo agent? Are you at a brokerage that you're leaning on a little bit because you're newer? Like there's nuance to all of this. And that's why we can't just give you, the perfect action plan is not going to be the same for a solo agent versus an independent brokerage with 5 offices. It's just, you're not going to be saying the same thing. So
that's very true.
So I think, one other thing you can do that's interesting is you can, I guess I mentioned changing the stage as part of an action plan.
Yeah.
One other thing you can do though is add or remove collaborators. Okay. So I just wanted to mention it as kind of the one thing I feel like I did not mention besides pausing action plans you can do. It could be interesting if you had like a leads manager type person. You might, when I did a little bit of a leads manager role for a little while when I worked directly with the team, and it was great. I added myself as a collaborator because I was like, these are the leads I need to keep my eye on. The agent's responsible, but this is my kind of short list across agents. Now you could easily do that with a tag as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes just being a collaborator on that makes it a little easier to.
It makes more sense actually as a collaborator, man.
So, again, maybe that's not the best use for like a solo agent or a small team. Point being, something you can do is add a collaborator on an action plan. And you can also pause a specific action plan or pause all action plans, which I want to get into a little more when we get into automations. Because automations can be dangerous if you start firing a bunch of them and they're all firing action plans. So let's have a strategy.
That's another place where I get lost sometimes too. So let's get into that, dude.
Well, cool. So automations are really fantastic. I think they have eliminated the need for a lot of people to use Zapier in these cases. I think a lot of people were using Zapier to do things that were relatively basic. Now, yeah, Zapier can do all kinds of cool, crazy stuff. But I think automations and Follow Boss have really allowed for people with even less technical experience to just be able to say, hey, here's the easiest use, in my opinion, of an automation. Start a certain action plan when a stage changes. If somebody gets changed to stage nurture, we should just make that trip, put them on a nurture action plan. It's really that, and that's a super simple automation,
That's
just
easy.
Right. But I think once again, we see all these things. We're like, oh, we could send them an email based on their how they opened 7 emails. And that's just too complicated to start. That stuff's great once you dig in. But for starters, consider, like I work with somebody where we set it up where once they come out of lead, it doesn't matter what it is, but once they come out of lead, the lead drip stops. It's not very fancy, but how powerful is that? They're like, okay, we want to stop. We don't know if the box is unchecked or if they're contact, but if the agent changes the stage away from lead, we want to stop that plan. because it is high touch, designed to convert, and you're going to look really stupid if you talk to them on the phone and you hang up with them and you don't log it, and then you hang up with them, and then 2 hours later they get an email that's like, hey, we haven't talked in a while, so let's be smart about these. Another popular one that may be built in to Follow Up Boss, especially for people who have connected websites like a Ylopo or any website with an IDX, is you can send an automation based on how many properties they've viewed. So you can actually send an email with the properties that they viewed recently in that email and say, hey, do you want any more? Would you like to go see any of these? They don't know that you can tell that they've been looking at those specific properties. They might be able to figure it out when you start emailing them the last 5 properties they looked at. But
well, you can do that super easy from the back end of Follow Boss on the email with the drop down menu, right?
Right. Well, yeah, because it's a merge code also. So you could do it as an email template, but you can fire it based on that someone has viewed X number of properties. You can say, once someone's viewed 10 properties, send them this email template.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
And one of the merge codes is the last 5 properties they viewed. So you can actually send them an email and they'll be like, oh my goodness, you know exactly what we're looking for.
All right. And that's automated too, right? So that as soon as it hits it automatically and then it populates those.
Correct.
And then you can see those images too, right?
So it sends the email. So that's a good touch. But, again, where does that fit into this whole strategy? Let's be careful that we're not just randomly hitting people with random things. You want to have, an overarching strategy ultimately. I'm trying to think of some other good automations. I didn't write down notes on them.
When it comes down to the automation, though, I have a question, because we often get lost in the whole process.
Yeah.
But most of our business as real estate agents comes from referrals from Sphere, referrals from past clients. That's really where most of our business comes from, hands down. So with that, what are some automations we can put in place quickly that can help with that? So let's say I go on my phone, Lee, and I grab MC Backup Pro and I export a CSV file, and I'm like, okay, I got my course Sphere, I got my phone list, dump it into Follow Up Boss. What would be that first automation that I set for these people that are in my Sphere? Anything that comes to mind to you?
Yeah, I think, let me tackle, I guess it works. Yeah, it works for Sphere also. So I work with somebody that is pretty heavy in Buffini. Like they're really big into A people get this, whether they're Sphere, past clients, they're just a top referrer. Like we don't really care their status transacting with you. They're somebody who would absolutely recommend and refer you. And they actually have a plan running where once that tag is added, so once the tag A or A+ is added to somebody, it's going to, for the most part, I think theirs creates tasks because they're Popeyes, they're things that they want to do because these are their most important people. But the key here is because it's triggered by a tag, and they're slowly adding, let's say, 5 people a week to it. They have these activities over the course of time. So instead of having 100 Popeyes in one day or in 1 week, the way that they're systematically doing it is they're getting periodic reminders that, they have a couple every week, couple of Popeyes, a couple of handwritten cards, a couple of one-on-one bomb videos. So instead of, I got to shoot 100 bombs, they're shooting three a week, maybe.
Okay.
Which ends up being an even higher number.
I have a question on this. I hear a little bit of feedback over there. If I'm creating the content, does your company go in and just automate the processes for me, put in the right action plans based on that?
Good question. I mean, honestly, where we are, I really like to focus on the whole picture because that's what everybody needs, the whole setup. Like, what are the right stages? And then when you change a certain stage, that can trigger an automation. I'm not a big fan of just doing kind of a one-off action plan or a one-off automation, just because that may be helpful. But if you don't have a global strategy, then we just have this one thing running that's like, all right, well, that's good, but the rest of it's all all kind of out of whack?
Yeah, that's what it is.
So the short answer is yes, but it's way more interesting to me to get a global setup that makes more sense so that agents understand what stages mean and what they do. If they're going to put them in nurture, what happens? Is that out of sight, out of mind? Or does that mean this? Or if they have a smart list that says recent activity, they need to look at who's been on their site recently. So yeah, so I'm really a bigger fan of the more global strategy, but here's the thing. This stuff is not all that hard. Like, you can hop on all the great free Follow Up Boss webinars and office hours and YouTube videos. This stuff isn't that hard to enact. I think what's hard for people is coming up with the more global strategy, is having enough time and focus to sit down and say, what do we want this to do? What should this do for our sphere and past clients? What should this do for leads? And even further, and I want to mention this without going down a rabbit hole, even further, what does this do on our new leads? For example, Zillow, Connected, Flex, whatever, people that are live transferred to you should probably not get the same action plan that sends an auto text that tries to convert them right off the bat, because they're on the freaking phone with you.
That's true. That's very true.
So that higher global strategy of like, oh, right, we need a plan without a text for Zillow Connected and Zillow Nurture, because they just said they don't want to talk to you. Let's not text them straight away.
Yeah, very true, man. Very true. And I think we forget that too. So, all right. Yeah. So Lee, how do we get a hold of you, man, if we want to hire you to just build this out for us?
I'm really easy to find. Email is lee@leeadkins.com. It's A-D as in dog, K-I-N-S. So L-E-E, A-D as in dog, K-I-N-S. You can also go to the leeadkins.com website, which will get you over to the company site. I had one more super quick thing I wanted to say.
Shoot.
Check my notes. Oh, name everything well. That's gonna be my big lead to all of you guys. Please don't name your automations, fires an action plan after 20 days. Like, nurture stage, fires action plan, buyer nurture 2 years. Like, just name them all well, please.
You're saying that from personal experience.
I can't even tell you how many times I've spent hours figuring out what people's automations do when all they really do is just fire an action plan.
Dude, I can totally relate with that, because when I look on the back end, I'm lost sometimes. I'm like, oh, I should have named that better.
To be fair, look, I'm not perfect either. Part of the reason this is top of mind is I did this myself today. I looked at my own and I was like, what does it do?
It's part of it.
So it's all part of the gig. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And happy to answer. I'll answer questions in the comments after the fact if I can help.
Thanks so much, man.
Cool. Appreciate it. See you soon.